This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
Well, hello, William. Welcome to the Born or Made podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well, my friend. I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much for asking.
So I always kind of like to start off my question simple as where am I actually speaking to you from right now?
I am in my home, my captain's quarters, because I also do a podcast every Monday night live at 8 o'clock, Captain's Quarters podcast, and it's in my home in St. Augustine, Florida, the oldest city in the nation.
It's the oldest city in the nation. Now, how come I didn't see that in my history books?
Because, believe it or not, 49 states in the United States of America teach American history beginning with the occupation of the British in the 1660s.
Right.
In the colony. St. Augustine, Florida was started in 1565. We actually, this September, will be the 459th birthday of St. Augustine. Believe it or not, everything you can think about having to do with history, some way, shape, or form, touches St. Augustine. I jokingly always tell everybody, if they've ever heard of the game 7 Ways to Kevin Bacon,
Yeah.
you can do 7 ways to St. Augustine with just about any historical event.
Really? Okay.
In fact, I'll give you one to start with.
Okay.
So they signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776.
Right.
Right? And Florida is British owned. Florida is the 14th and 15th colonies of the British occupied New World. 3 of the signers of the Declaration of Independence decided they signed the Declaration of Independence, and where does everybody want to go? We're going to Disneyland. Well, they went to Disney World, but there was none here. They just came to Florida. British owned. They were promptly arrested and thrown in jail here in St. Augustine.
Really? Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So where did you grow up at? Like, are you a Florida guy, or where are you from originally?
I am an original St. Augustinian. My family roots of St. Augustine stretch back to the 1700s, stretch back into the state of Florida, back into the late 1600s. So we've been here for a long time. But my father died when I was 2.5, and my mom married somebody else in the area, and that man decided he didn't want to be, and I say this with the utmost respect, he was my father, he was all I really knew, but he joined the Air Force because there was a better life for him in the military, and we traveled around. We did Texas, Arkansas, Arizona, England. So I spent a long time traveling as a little boy. But we always came back here every summer we could, so we could still be in with our family and still keep traditions. But then in 1977, I too joined the military and spent 16 years working for Uncle Sam serving our country. So, but I ended up leaving the military. I was living in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I was doing magic and comedy clubs and corporate shows as an entertainer. But in 2004, came home for a family reunion, brought my wife with me, and on the way back to Vegas, she said, I like St. Augustine. We should move there, which was a surprise to me, but then we came on back and we moved back here to St. Augustine in January 1st of 2007, and I've been here ever since. So we're talking almost 18 years back home, doing what I'm now doing as a pirate historian.
So what branch were you in, first of all, then?
I was in the United States Air Force.
Okay, so you're in Air Force. I thought with you. So did you end up getting out in Vegas?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I was between Vegas and Tucson, Arizona, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and I got out with paperwork-wise. I got out with 16 years in because there was a big buyout program under George Bush Sr. But then a year later, they approved the 15-year retirement program, and well, I missed out on that.
Dadgummit. Yeah, well, that's great. So this is fun. So you're in Vegas, and was your magic around pirates or anything like that, or was it just
Had nothing to do with pirates, nothing whatsoever. I was pretty much a lounge lizard comedy magician, and did a lot of corporate shows, did some of the comedy clubs, had a good time working comedy clubs, but Vegas started to turn into a corporate arena, and some of the fun. I moved to Vegas in the 80s when it was fun, and the mob still ran it, and you didn't cheat anybody, and Vegas has turned into a big corporate mecca, and it's different now. If you lived there in the old school days and now you live there again, you'd notice a difference, and you probably wouldn't enjoy it. So I lived there from pretty much on and off from 85 to 2006.
No kidding. Yeah, I've only been out there a few times. I mean, I went, my last time I went out there, went to a Formula One race. It's just not growing up there. I mean, it'd be like I grew up in Austin, Texas, and I go back there now, and I'm just like, wow. So I can't imagine Vegas, because, I mean, that's kind of where it all started, right? I mean, it was known that was for the mob, right? And I mean, that
was 𝗕ecie 𝗿𝗁𝘂𝘁 and the mob. They started it back in the 40s, I think it was, and the rest is history. There are a lot of good things about Vegas. There are a lot of bad things about Vegas, but as we say in the military, the only good place to live is the place you're getting ready to leave, and the place you're getting ready to go to. That's a military thing.
Yeah, that's a great attitude. So you do all that, you come here, and then so when you come to St. Augustine, are you unemployed? You got a job lined up, or you got an idea? What was your thought process? Or you just you got a chance and you're coming home?
Well, a little of both. It took me 2 years to close contracts and prepare to move out of Vegas and come back here.
Okay.
So in that time frame, that was back in the days of MySpace, if you remember MySpace social media.
Yeah.
I posted on there that I was leaving Vegas and coming home. Well, I immediately got 2 offers from some people here in this area that had magic shops and other things, and they said, well, we'd like to hire you. What they offered, and then what the actual offer was in person when I got here, the original offer online was wonderful. I thought, I got a job. When I got here and within the first 2 weeks had conversations with these people, the offer wasn't even livable. In fact, it was so bad that my wife, at the one meeting we went to, my wife actually looked at the guy and said, it's time for us to go. You obviously don't know who is here sitting with you to help you with your magic. And she was referring to me. So she was pretty mean to the person about it. And we got up and left and never worked. So the other reason I wanted to come home is I wanted to open a dinner theater here, a magic dinner theater in St. Augustine. And that would have been in the summer of 2007. We didn't quite do that. One of the reasons is because my aunt, who was a chef, had died about a year before. We'd had all these plans and then she passed on. So we tried something with a club here in St. Augustine that had a stage and had some comedy nights. So they allowed me to do my Vegas show. Miserable failure. I have no problems admitting it. Miserable failure. St. Augustine in 2007 wasn't ready for a Vegas style fun show.
Okay.
And it cost me. It hurt my ego. But in the interim, I had friends that said, well, you're good with cards and close up. Why don't you dress as a pirate and hang out in some of the taverns in St. Augustine? We've got several that are kind of old school taverns that would fit the genre of the time. So I started hanging out in some of the places. A couple of the bars actually let me stand behind the bar and do magic tricks across the bar for anybody. And I worked for tips for months and slowly became an alcoholic.
Perfect.
So, but in 2008, I was given an offer to help a guy that was wanting to bring a pirate ship here to St. Augustine that would be a tourist thing. And I was an entertainer, so I approached it from the idea that I was going to create a pirate show on the stage with all the other pirates. It was pretty much comedy and song and everything having to do with pirates. And I did learn one thing then. I have a terrible singing voice. I can't sing very well, but people don't care if a pirate sings. They just want him to sing, whether it's good or bad. They just want him to sing. So I was singing. Well, we parted ways in 2010. Licensing or differences of opinion. If a man owns a business and hires an entertainer, I believe the man should stay out of the entertainer's side of the business, as I would stay out of the business side of the business. But he didn't see it that way, and he really squelched a lot of really good routines that we were doing, and I just decided I was done. That's when I got contacted by the St. Augustine Pirate and Treasure Museum in 2010. They were building it. I'm sure you're familiar with the owner of the Pirate and Treasure Museum. You ever met or had any contact with 𝗕cie𝗿𝗁𝘀𝘁?
No, sir.
He's from Philadelphia.
Okay.
He is the man that owns the museum. He also has several bars in the Keys, and he's done some dives on TV, and he's done quite a bit. He's a motivational speaker.
Yeah, because I recognize his last name.
𝗕cie,
Yeah.
𝗕cie𝗿𝗁𝘀𝘁.
Okay.
I bet when we're done here, if you look him up, you might have seen it, some of the things.
I probably
He was also
have.
at one point in time a partial owner to the Philadelphia 76ers
Okay.
in the 1990s. So he has this museum. It was in the Keys, but he closed it down and moved it to St. Augustine. And he has two loves. He has a love of pirates and pirate history, and he has a love of magic. And I'm actually have been billed since 2007 as the pirate magician of St. Augustine. So he
Perfect.
calls up and says, "Hey, I'd like you to work for me." And I started work for him then. So that's 14 and a half years ago that I've been doing tours in the Pirate Museum for him, for the tourists here. And we believe that somewhere in the next 2 months, we'll hit the 10,000 mark on the number of tours I've done.
Holy cow.
Yeah. 10,000 tours. It's probably more than that, because there's a lot of tours that we didn't document, or I did impromptu, or I happened to be at the museum and somebody says, "Oh, I was wanting a tour." Okay, well, I'll give you a tour. Okay. So I talk about pirate history. I talk about the pirate history of the golden age of piracy, which is very important to the actual history of the United States of America.
So
Believe it or not.
that is so cool. So you go through all this stuff I mean, I guess you kind of got your dream job.
Yeah, kind
Yeah.
of. I think so.
Yeah,
I mean, Mark Twain had said that if we lived well, God would have given us the opportunity to be pirates. I guess I lived well.
I'd say
I guess
so.
I'm living Mark Twain's philosophy, and and the best part, and it's ironic too, the best part is I have a crew of pirates here. There are a lot of different pirate crews here in St. Augustine, in Florida, because the history of pirates in Florida is pretty rich. But most of the pirate crews, they get together and emulate everything from Pirates of the Caribbean 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 by Walt Disney, where pirates just spend all their time drinking. Now, I don't have a problem with that, but my pirate crew, the St. Augustine Swashbucklers, we are community driven, and we do charity events. And primarily, most of those charity events, the money we raise from those events goes to teachers here in St. Johns County to help them buy things they need for their school without pulling it out of their pocket, because we all know how poorly paid teachers are.
Yep.
We helped the Humane Society. Last summer, might have been the summer before, 2 summers ago, they have a big food drive every summer because of hurricane season, and they need to have food for all the pets, especially people that forget how to take care of them. And we helped them raise 5,000 pounds of food that summer. We also do work with 𝗕cie𝗿𝗁𝘀𝘁 Acres, which is a no-kill animal zone. And the fire department here now has a new cadet program of teenagers that are cadets, kind of like a Sheriff's Explorer program, and the cadets provide assistance, security, and manpower for some of the events we build. So we're very community oriented, and we give all the money away.
Wow.
It's just, I mean, and it's not a lot of money. We probably give somewhere around $9,000 to $14,000 a year away. There are expenses, obviously. You're a businessman, you know that. And we probably raise between 20 and 30,000 a year. And a portion of it goes to business expense or to cover I have 50 crew members. So when they go and do an event, they're volunteers, but I do try to make sure that at any event, they have food, they have drink, and they have gas money. It's only fair because they work their hindquarters off very hard for their captain. So it's only fair to try to at least do that for them.
Well, and I mean, yeah, don't make light of 9 or 14,000. Without your help, they wouldn't get 9 or 14,000. So that's important. True. So, I mean,
that's very true. That's very true. And when we first started doing all this, or when I first started doing all this, I was trying to help a dozen or more charities, and it got to be a lot of work because we were doing 20 or 30 events a year, and I was wearing myself and my crew out. So about 3 or 4 years ago, we took a couple of steps back. We picked 4 charities. We do 3 events. We give all those charities a portion of every event, and all we ask those charities to do is use their email system to let all of their other supporters know about our events, so they'll come to our events and spend money and buy tickets. And so it kind of works out. I'm not trying to burn the financial world down with what we're doing. I'm just trying to help my community as best I can, and that kind of money is still good, especially for the teachers, for the school teachers here. So it's still worthy of my piratical bragging rights.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I mean, and you know, I live in Virginia, so we don't obviously have a lot of pirate history up there. Everything is 100% based on, you know, the signing of the Declaration and before that. So that I live in an area where it's highly Civil War related. So that's pretty much all we hear about. So when I was learning about listening, or they were telling me about pirates, I got so excited because I'm like, I'm the average guy, right? Everything I've ever seen is 100% on TV or what basic stuff I've read. So I feel like
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and so I want to really understand. So you got the pirates are getting here. You said, was it 1560 or 60? What was it?
So St. Augustine begins by the Spanish in 1565.
1565.
And they put St. Augustine here because the Spanish have control of most of the trade routes from Spain through the Caribbean to South America. And then once they leave South America, they come up through Havana, Cuba, and to St. Augustine, Florida, and then take the long trip back all the way across the Atlantic Ocean back to Spain. The Spanish have taken over almost all of South America in the 1500s because South America has more riches than North America did.
Absolutely.
North America had gold and silver. Believe it or not, in South America, they had gold, silver, platinum, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, you name it. They had it. So this is what makes Spain the most powerful and richest nation in the world through the late 1400s, all through the 1500s. So St. Augustine was a stop for the treasure fleet 2 times a year, and these ships laden with all this ore and all these gemstones would stop in St. Augustine. So pirates would naturally go ahead and try to hit St. Augustine because of all the stuff that was here. So St. Augustine actually, in its first 130 years, had as many as 11 pirate attacks in 130 years. But that's in the 1600s. What you know as pirate is called the Golden Age of Piracy. What everybody knows is because of movies, and the Golden Age of Piracy starts in the 1680s and ends in the 1720s. It's only 50 years long, but almost every movie ever created is about that time frame of pirate history. And those pirates, the British, even the French, the Spanish, the Welsh, the Irish, and the Scottish, all of them created laws on board their ship. It was called the Code. The Code was very specific. And one of the more important laws of all of that is that every man on a ship, regardless of his skin color, his nationality, or his religious belief, every man that has signed the Code gets an equal share of the food, an equal share of the work, an equal share of the rum, and an equal share of the money. And 1 vote, every man gets 1 vote in affairs of the moment. Affairs of the moment means that everything that's happening on that ship that affects the crew makes the decision. The captain is only there to follow through with the decision made by the crew's vote.
So it's a democracy.
What form of government are they running?
Yeah, it was a democracy.
Absolutely. It is the earliest known forms of democracy in the New World, and it is one of the reasons why all of Europe hated pirates, because we were stealing them blind, and sowing the seeds of democracy, letting people know that by your own sweat of your brow, by your contribution and working well with others in a community, you control your destiny, not the royal families of Europe.
So that's wild. So I'm a pirate now, right? So I'm hanging, me and you're hanging out. So when we're not robbing, pillaging, whatever, you know, you want to call it, where are we hanging out? Are we down in Cuba? Hanging down there? No. So where are we at?
Some of the pirates hung out in various locations through the Caribbean islands. Tortuga was one of the more practical ones. But some of the pirates, they had home berth for their ship in some places that were regular ports of entry for other people, like the British or the French Navy. At some points in time, Port Royal, Jamaica was a big hangout for most of all the pirates. And depending on who owned the island, for example, it was British in the 1680s, and they needed a new governor. And guess what they did? They took and made, believe it or not, Captain Morgan. Yes, there's a real Captain Morgan.
Okay.
They made the King of England, made him the governor of Port Royal, Jamaica in 1684. And in 1686, he died. Ironically, he died from alcohol poisoning.
Shocking.
There's so many twists. Yeah. Me as a comedian have found so many interesting twists to the pirate history that my tour, every time I do a tour, my tours are about 45 to 55 minutes long in the museum. Every tour I do is like a miniature comedy club show. I'm telling you about history. I'm sharing with you ideas on history, but I'm also showing the hilarious, humorous side of everything behind it. I mean, the start of my tour is always this. If you have a question during the tour, raise a hook in the air. I'll answer any question you throw at me, because you're about to find out that all the things you know about pirates is not as true as you think, because far too many of you spend way too much time watching Walt Disney. That's the opening line of my tour.
Yeah, I can already. Yeah, I can tell right now. I'm already learning. So there really was a Captain Morgan, but he was the governor of Jamaica as we know it today.
He was a pirate, and he actually was able to sit down with the King of England in 1682, 1683, and convince the king that they needed a stronger governor in Port Royal. And the king said, by all means, go down there and take over. And so he did.
So we're pirates, we're hanging out.
He is the Captain Morgan that everybody thinks of too, because he created rum also.
But he didn't do a very good job because it killed him when he was making
That's right.
it. Yeah, okay.
Well, here's the backstory to that. There were no governmental influences on how strong or how weak your rum could be. And you could get a barrel of rum that you could drink the whole barrel and not feel the effects of it at all, or you could get a barrel of rum and drink one thimbleful and it would keel you over.
That's so
And
funny.
rum was a trading commodity back then. Rum was more valuable than gold at times.
No kidding. So I guess,
and the pirates wanted it.
So I guess what I'm trying to figure out. So you and I are pirates. We're hanging out in Jamaica. So if another ship comes in from well, I guess obviously British, but wherever, from another country, do they try to fight us, or they just kind of leave us alone? I mean, how does all that? I mean, you're in boats, so it's not like you're parking them in a different spot. I mean,
so here's how it goes. Some of the pirates had inside information with some of the government officials that knew when the supply, merchant, or cargo ships were coming in. Because as I tell everybody, those are the three major targets of pirates, because they were thieves. All the rest of the things that go with pirates is not necessarily totally true. They were thieves. Remember what I said about an equal share of the food, the rum, the work, and the money?
Yep.
You know what I tell everybody? I tell everybody that really literally is the first evidence of a limited liability corporation in the New World. They're all shareholders.
Was the same thing in the pirate ship too?
They were criminals, but it was a business.
Yeah.
It was not a lark. It was not men that wanted to get together and go look for mermaids and bury treasure, because they didn't bury treasure. It was a business for them, and they were very, very successful with it. So the targets were cargo, merchant, and supply ships. So a pirate might know when one of those ships is coming in, knowing about the route it's going to take, so they'll go out and meet it. and they'll strip it clean and then bring everything in and sell it themselves. Now, I tell the people that are on my tour, if you're in one of those seaports and the governmental ship comes in and brings it to you, you're going to pay for it because, as we all know, the government gives nobody nothing for free.
That's right.
And when you buy it from the government, you got to pay that little extra called taxes. But if I steal it and bring it to you, none of you will tell me, no, I'm not going to buy it because it's the king's merchandise and that's wrong for stealing. All of you would buy it. And the biggest reason everybody would buy it, I tell them, for 3 reasons. 1, it would be cheaper because I got to get rid of it as quick as I can. 2, you're not going to pay taxes. And 3, you have no other options because Sam Walton hasn't been born yet.
That's right. So man, these guys are quite the entrepreneurs. How come I never hear about that part?
They were. They actually had become so strong by 1718, 1719 that England was on a very big verge of a big financial collapse. If that had actually happened in the 1720s, there might not have ever been an American Revolution.
Wow. Yeah, you never hear about that, do you?
No, you do not.
So why was there?
Everybody just thinks that pirates are a bunch of fun-loving guys that chase mermaids, drink rum, and sword fight with their buddies. And in reality, it was a business, and they were making good money.
So why did they have such a short window? I mean, 50 years is really not that long because, I mean, it's not like we were flying planes in the 1800s. So the reason the window was shortened is this. 1680s, 1690s, they were unfettered. They could do whatever they wanted. Yep.
But then in the 1700s, they were starting to really put a dent in the financial systems of England, Spain, and France, the 3 major superpowers of the time. Now, England, Spain, and France had been at war since the 1400s, 14, 15, 16, into the 1700s. They'd been fighting with each other on and off for the 300 years. They finally have come to this conclusion that if we don't stop these pirates, we don't have a chance, because the pirates were controlling everything down here. So they got together and did some things to make it harder for the pirates. And ironically, the British did this. I don't know for sure if the Spanish did, but the British did something that was very interesting. First off, the British decided to remove all opportunities for jurisprudence. What that meant was that if you were even viewed as being a pirate, had a friend that was a pirate, you were related to a pirate, or touched a pirate in any way, they didn't have to have proof that you could be automatically executed right on the spot. They also, the British ships, believe it or not, the British Admiralty told the British captains that if they took a pirate ship, if they were sure it was a pirate ship, they could take the ship, they could execute everybody on board without trial, and then split the money or split all the treasure they found or anything they found on the ship amongst the crew of the military British ship, thereby turning the British Navy into a bunch of legal pirates.
Let's say they were pirates.
Yep. But they got together and were able to squash the British, squash the pirates, so that by 1724, it was pretty much over and done with. Blackbeard was the start of it, 1718, when the British hunted him down off the coast of North Carolina and executed him. And that was pretty much the start of it, 1718 all the way to 1724. So you got about 6 years that the pirates really, really, really had problems and just were not as successful as they wanted to be.
And then after that, it was just kind of over, because I just always thought that it was into the 1800s because we were still had, ships coming across.
Of course, there was still pirates, but none of the movies do anything about it. So it's like anything else in history. How many people do you know, if you actually told them, believe it or not, the entire world was not black and white before World War II? Think about it. Movies, everything about World War II and beyond is in black and white, and everybody believes that we didn't come up with color until the 1950s.
Yeah, 50s.
So people derive their ideas on anything having to do with history based on all the television shows, which partially is sad, because it does cause a lot of misinterpretations. It causes, if you watch the goings on of things going on in our world now in this country, there are a lot of things about history that cause a lot of anguish and a lot of problems. I tell people there are three subject matters, and I tell people this during my tour. There are three subject matters that will cause people to be triggered in either a positive or negative direction: politics, religion, and history. And in my tour, I talk about all three because, believe it or not, pirates were Christians. And we have a book in the museum, a Bible that belonged to a pirate named Captain William Kidd. And pirates were involved in politics. But I tell everybody that when we talk politics, it's civics. I'm not going to mention party names, and I'm not going to mention affiliations. But it's pretty obvious with the kind of history I teach. People can kind of figure me out.
Well, we're very fortunate because the fact that it ended so long ago that we still have the history available, even because, I mean, you just like, you know, I'm a lot older. I mean, we never talked about it. Like you said, I mean, we either saw it in a movie, Walt Disney, because, you know, we had all of 3 channels. And then to hear about this, so you mean this thing you said kind of stopped in 1730?
1724.
1724. I mean, so here we are, and you know, you're, what is that then? We're 200, 300 years, and we're still talking about it, and you still have history. So I guess we're fortunate in that regards, because they could have squashed that and you'd have just been a cartoon character.
We also have there's another pirate from 1812, 1814, the Battle of New Orleans. Andrew Jackson employed Jean Lafitte to help in the Battle of the War of 1812. So, and Jean Lafitte admired the pirates of 100 years before him and the way their code was set up for the men, that's how he ran his crew 100 years later. And they were pretty successful at beating back the British down in New Orleans. So we have that. Everybody now knows pirates only because of Somalia. There are pirates still, but the golden age of piracy, the reason we emulate them or talk about them in a fairly positive way is because their rules, their code, their law, their democracy gave every man that was part of a crew an equal opportunity to further better themselves. Now, obviously, most of them all died as a result of choosing to be pirates because they're criminals, but they were in control of their lives. Pirates that you see now in the news, they're just drugs and soldiers to warlords and drug lords.
Right.
There's no similarity whatsoever to modern day pirates to the older pirates. And I said, and I didn't complete this sentence, but ironically, believe it or not, I do get people that come up to me and go, how can you be a pirate and do stuff for children? I don't know, but children love the hell out of pirates.
Yes, they do. Absolutely.
So, I mean, and one of the more famous stories of all is Treasure Island, but there's another one. You know, Peter Pan was written in 1898, 126 years ago. Captain Hook's probably one of the more better loved pirates.
I mean, yeah, as a kid, I mean, that was kind of the one. I mean, I guess there's, you know, Blackbeard. Who else? I mean, you got Blackbeard, Morgan. I honestly never thought about that one other than rum. I mean, who are probably the biggest historical pirates?
You've got Sam Bellamy out of Massachusetts.
Okay.
You have Blackbeard, obviously. You have Calico Jack Rackham, Anne Bonny, Mary Read, Henry Every, Davy Vane, Bartholomew Roberts. He was probably one of the more successful pirates. Remember I told you their target was merchant supplying cargo ships?
Mm-hmm.
He was a pirate captain for only 38 months. The average for most of these men was 22 to 30 months. He outlasted them by 8 months. Blackbeard was only a pirate for 23 months. In 23 months, Blackbeard took 5 ships. Now, he blockaded Charleston, so that's something too, but Blackbeard took 5 ships. Bartholomew Roberts, on the other hand, in 38 months, took 467 ships.
What? How's that possible?
Yeah. Well, there are some stories that, for example, he went into San Martinique and there were 13 ships in the harbor. And by the time he was done, he owned all 13 ships and had control of the whole harbor, all in one afternoon. So he was a brilliant mathematician and tacticianer. and knew, and he's my favorite pirate. And the reason he's my favorite pirate is because at the end of his life, when he died by 13 musket balls entering his body from British sharpshooters off of British Navy ships. And when he crumpled up on the deck, his entire crew laid their weapons down and allowed the British Navy to take them and execute them all as a crew. To me, that's loyalty.
Wow.
So that's why he's my favorite pilot. He instilled what I believe is very important, loyalty. I still believe in this day and age that loyalty is important. I have great crew members. I have crew members that all have real jobs or are retired, and they dress as pirates so that they can help do the things we do. And I'll give you an example. I have 2 pirates in my crew that are retired military officers. I wasn't an officer in the military. I'm just a captain.
Yep.
A pirate captain. But they accord me all the respect and the chain of command, and we run our crew like a real crew. And everybody gets an equal share of what we can share, and the rest of it goes to charity. And at 65 years old, yep, that's my age. At 65 years old, I'm happy. When your producer sent me the email and told me what your show is about, I had to tell her, I don't think I'm worthy of your show, because I'm not making gobs and gobs of money, but I am keeping people happy and taking care of my community. So I guess in one way, shape, or form that works. But we still, for every one of our events, we still go out and get sponsors to help us run the events, and then we go out there and sell the tickets. And you know, and if a pirate approaches you and you don't want to help us, you will help us.
That's funny. That's awesome. No, I was so excited. I mean, like I said, I mean, you think about it, these guys were entrepreneurs. You know, I don't even really, that's not a big name. I don't really care for that name. I mean, what great business minds. I mean, the one guy you're talking about, I mean, statistician, I mean, this guy was unbelievable. I mean, think about what he'd have been in by today's standards as a general or a great leader in a military. I mean, my gosh, that's unbelievable.
Well, some of them were ex-military leaders anyway, and didn't like the way the British or the Spanish or the French ran the Navy, and the enlisted people were treated like slaves anyway. Mm-hmm. And in all 3 of those countries, the officers were educated men, not the enlisted men for most cases. There are exceptions to that rule. So it's just kind of, I think some of these men, look at it this way, more than anything else, these men were anti-government.
Wow.
And that's what we have still today. I mean, some of the biggest fights and the biggest arguments that people have today is they're anti-government. And in fact, probably, and I don't want to make this any kind of a political.
No, we're fine.
And I don't know where your political leanings lie. I could guess, but you know, a big portion of our country, they want the government to do everything for us. And a big portion of our country wants the government to leave us the hell alone. These pirates were in that leave us the hell alone. So had they been registered any kind of party, they probably would have been libertarians.
That's right. I'd say they're libertarians. Maybe we should change the name to pirates.
I've considered running for president under the pirate party ticket.
How fun would that be? Yeah. I mean, I just think about like all this stuff, and I mean, and these people were, you talk about tough. I mean, so they would just set out. I mean, like we think about today, like, you know, I've got an app on my phone. I can tell you what plane's above me, where it's going on. These guys were in a little place called the ocean that the best you can see on a good day is 9 miles in either direction. And you just get lucky, you know, the route, I guess, but still, and then they got to go chase them and do, I mean, this was serious.
So you want to know another little secret that nobody knows about until they take my tour, until I share with them?
Please.
There was no such thing as longitude till 1773.
No kidding.
Everything was done by celestial navigation.
Say then. Stars.
Everything, not just pirates, explorers, the Navy, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Longitude did not come about until 1773, right around the start of the American Revolution. So without longitude, there's no such thing as coordinates. Mm-hmm. So I'm expanding on what you said. They're out there in the middle of that ocean. They can't see very far ahead. How do they make their navigational directions? How do they figure out what to do? Compass obviously was a big influence on direction, but how do they make the decision on degrees of north and south or east and west? It's all based on the heavens. And when I tell people that, I do tell people, and this is something about history that I don't know if we could ever find anything to prove it or not, but I actually believe that probably in the 16 and 1700s, even in the daytime, you could see much more above you than you could in modern day times, because we've just filled the air with too much stuff.
Yeah, there's so much more light. I live out on a farm, and I can see DC to the north. I can see Richmond to the south, and there's this massive glow. I mean, I've been on a cruise ship, but it wouldn't. I wonder what it'd be like to be out in the middle of the Atlantic, 500 miles out, and I mean, imagine how dark it is, and you could see the stars on a clear night, and think that that's how they navigated.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of all these things that we just take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays everybody relies on that idiot box, like in your phone, that has a voice that tells you to turn left or turn right. Do you know you can get a pirate voice for those?
Can you really? Yeah,
some of the apps where you can get a pirate voice.
Well, I definitely have a different view now on all this stuff. I'm like, man, this is like, it's kind of disappointing that we don't know more about them, and we've kind of been hijacked by the movies and stuff like that of really, what they really were and how they did it. I mean, like I said, first thing I noticed, like, it's a democracy. They had a democracy on the ship.
Yes.
And I didn't know that. I just assumed the captain was in charge and he told them what to do, but that they all got to participate.
So here's something that I throw at my tours. The captain runs the ship by the will of the crew. The will of the crew is determined by the vote of the crew. So major decisions that need to be made are done by the crew and their vote. I say, if it doesn't sound familiar to you, let me explain something to you. The President of the United States is supposed to run the country by the will of the people.
That's correct.
The will of the people is determined by vote.
That's correct.
It is the exact same thing. The person that's put in charge is put in charge because the people are supposed to have the faith in them to have an ear that listens to the people and guides us, not pushes and forces us. Mm-hmm. And that's was the role of a captain. The captain was voted in by the crew, along with his officers. The crew voted whether they wanted them as captain or not. If they didn't get the vote, they weren't captain.
Wow.
He wasn't the biggest and baddest with a sword. So you've gotten a pretty general overview of pirates. Why don't you come to St. Augustine and take a visit?
Well, I'm going to. I'll be back down in August, and I'm actually coming. 100%.
Good. You let me know what date it is in August, and I'll put you on one of my tours. If I have to, I'll give you a private tour, but it's more fun when there's a lot of people.
Absolutely, get interaction that way. It'd be fun.
I love it. And then afterwards, are you a drinking man?
No, sir.
Damn, I don't know if I can trust you now.
Yeah, you can trust me. I'll pour yours and watch you. I'll tee them up for you.
Always on Saturday afternoons after my last tour, there's a bar that's part of our property, and the girls all know that I go in there to drink rum. So, but we can go in there and still sit and talk.
That's fun.
You let me know what the date is that you want to come. If it's on a weekend, especially, that's great. And come down and experience St. Augustine.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Well, as our time comes to the end, I always have my favorite question of the day is, so listening to all this stuff and your great story and now with Pirate, do you think you were born or do you think you were made?
I'll try not to make it a long answer.
It's fine.
I believe that all of us are born for something, but how we manage to make it, that's the free will that we have in our psyche, and to make the proper decisions. Sometimes we make bad ones, but sometimes the bad ones will put us in the right direction also. So I believe that because of my love of history and my background, my family background, because we trace our family history all the way back to Martha Washington. So I believe with those things that there's a certain part of it that I was born for this. This is it. This is what I do. This is how I'm leaving my legacy to the world. I was born to be a pirate. And there are people downtown, if I go downtown right now in civilian clothes, I can walk right past them. They don't recognize me. So I believe that are you born or made? I believe I was born for it. I just believe that all the choices, and some of them not good, all the choices I made. So it's a combination of both. How's that for a middle of the road answer?
That's my answer. So I'm with you on that one. I get them all over the place. Yours is definitely more in line with mine, but some are, like I said, the great thing is there's no wrong answer. So
there isn't.
Yeah.
It's also one of the reasons I tell everybody that time travel is not possible, because everything that's happened for my last 64 years leading up to 65, all of it has brought me to this point. If I were to go back in time and change one of the things that was bad, we might not even be sitting here having this conversation right now.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, so that part of me believes that you're born for it, but I still believe you have to have a brain and you have to make some decisions on the path that you need to be down. And this is just where I've ended up.
That's so great. Well, thank you, William, for being on the Born or Made podcast. I look forward to seeing you next month.
Hi. You make sure the lovely that I've been talking to sends me information on when you're coming down, and I'll make some plans to make sure we get to meet in person, and I'll show you the museum and maybe a few other things around if you like.
Perfect. Thank you again.
Thank you. I'm flattered to have been on the show. It's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.